Welcome to the Deep Dive. This is where we take your sources and really dig in to find the essential knowledge and insights.
And today, we're diving into a specific Columbo episode. It's from 1976 called Old-Fashioned Murder.
Yeah, based on a pretty detailed review and analysis you sent over.
That's right. So we'll be unpacking, the plot, the characters, the investigation bits, and even some behind-the-scenes stuff about the writing and why the reviewer wasn't entirely thrilled with it.
Okay, so our mission here is to really get into this material, understand the story, look at what the reviewer saw as strengths, and maybe more so the weaknesses.
And pull out any, surprising details that pop up when you look closely at a classic like Columbo.
Think of this as your shortcut. You get the plot rundown, the critical take, everything you need to know about this particular episode without needing to watch it or read that whole analysis yourself.
All right, let's dive in. Setting the scene. It's the Lytton Family Museum. Sounds kind of, maybe a bit dull. A family museum world.
Yeah, sounds a bit sleepy. There's a big problem under the surface, right?
Mm-hmm. Money. The museum's losing it badly.
And that's the core conflict. You've got Edward Lytton, the older brother. He's part of this, old money family.
Right, and he wants to shut the museum down, sell off the assets.
So he and his sisters, Ruth and Phyllis is the more socialite type, can just split the cash.
But Ruth Lytton, she's completely devoted to this museum. It's like her entire life. She will absolutely not let Edward close it. That's her driving force.
So that leads her to cook up a plan. A pretty involved one, actually.
Yeah, she ropes in the museum's security guard, Milton Schaefer. He's clearly having a tough time, down on his luck.
And the plan is?
He stages a break-in, steals some specific valuable pieces, and Ruth promises him $100,000.
The idea being she uses the insurance money to save the museum.
Exactly. And to sweeten the pot, or maybe just make sure he vanishes, she also promises him a fake passport.
Which works for him, because he's got his own problems.
Big time. Gambling debts, thugs apparently tailing him, disappearing sounds pretty appealing.
So the setup she gives him is really specific. It involves faking his death before the robbery.
Right. She tells him, okay, call your brother at 9 p.m., leave this dramatic message like you're in danger, then fire a gun near the phone, make it sound like you've been shot.
Wow. And then he robs the museum.
Uh-huh. At 2 a.m. Then he's supposed to meet Ruth afterwards.
And Ruth makes sure nobody's around to see anything.
Yeah. She clears the decks. Her niece, Janie, that's Phyllis's daughter, was meant to be helping Edward with inventory that night.
Oh.
But Ruth gives her a pass, says she doesn't need to come in after her date, which ends at 11 p.m. So the coast is clear at the Lytton house, theoretically. Very precise timing.
Okay, so the plan is in motion. Ruth heads to the museum later that night after her sister and niece are supposedly asleep.
And Schaefer's there, doing his part, carrying out the robbery just like they planned.
But then things go wrong. Very wrong.
Yeah, this is where Ruth's real plan unfolds. She doesn't just meet him. She shoots him. Cold blood. Right near that payphone booth he used earlier.
And Edward. He was there too.
He was, just nearby, quietly doing inventory, actually recording it onto a tape. He hears the shot, comes to see what's happening.
And Ruth shoots him too.
With the gun she just took off Schaefer's body. A revolver.
Jeez. So double murder. And then she stages it.
Yep. Makes it look like they shot each other. Puts Schaefer's gun in his hand, another gun in Edward's hand. Knocks the phone off the hook near Schaefer.
And crucially,
turns off the light in that room before she leaves, makes it look like a chaotic shootout in the dark.
And this is the scene Lieutenant Columbo walks into the next day.
Exactly. He gets called in because Schaefer's brother got that weird message on his machine and reported him missing.
Columbo hears Schaefer was fired by Edward, which is Ruth's lie, right?
Right. A cover story. So he goes to the Lytton house.
And Ruth plays it cool.
Very cool. Says Edward's sleeping in, worked late. Offers Columbo tea for his hay fever classic Columbo interaction.
Ah, yeah. And she introduces him to Janie and Phyllis.
And Phyllis promptly faints, which definitely gets your attention.
So, since there's no body found yet for Schaefer, Ruth needs to keep things moving.
Mm-hmm. Phase 2. She says she and Janie will go to the museum to continue the inventory, let Edward sleep.
But she knows.
She knows exactly where the bodies are, and she sends Janie off alone into that part of the museum. It's pretty cool when you think about it.
To see how Janie finds them. Both bodies. Must have been horrifying.
Absolutely traumatic. And that's when Columbo's real investigation kicks off.
So the crime scene. Sergeant Miller's there. What puzzles Columbo right away?
Well, the lights being off is the big one. If they supposedly shot each other simultaneously, why in the dark? He figures neither could have aimed properly.
Though the review mentions they don't really consider if maybe Edward just fell against the switch, right?
Yeah, that possibility isn't really explored. Then there's Schaefer himself. His whole look is just weird.
The clothes.
Tropical shirt, brand new shoes, this calendar watch, fresh haircut, manicure. He looks like he's off on holiday.
Miller thinks Vegas.
Yeah, but Columbo spots a vaccination mark. Suggests overseas travel.
But no luggage.
Yeah.
No passport. In his car or apartment?
Nope. None. It doesn't fit.
And there's that note.
Ah, yes, the note. Turned twice after midnight. Found in Schaefer's things. Columbo wonders if it's some kind of instruction for navigating the museum, maybe.
So he starts following these little clues. The haircut leads him to a salon.
Yep, and that's where we meet Daryl, the sensitive stylist, a scene the reviewer really enjoyed.
And the watch.
Leads him to the watch seller.
And that's where the note gets explained.
Exactly. Turned twice after midnight wasn't museum directions. It was a reminder for his watch.
To fix the date?
Right. To wind the calendar forward twice because it was showing April 31st, which doesn't exist, and make it May 1st.
Okay, so what's the big deal about that?
It's proof. It strongly suggests Schaefer was alive after midnight, which means that 9 p.m. phone call pretending he was dying, totally fake, staged.
And Columbo lets Ruth know he figured this out. Subtly, I assume.
Oh, absolutely. Just drops it into conversation.
But Ruth realizes.
Big oops. If Schaefer died after midnight, then all the Lytton women, who were supposedly home, suddenly don't have alibis for the actual murder time. They're all potential suspects.
Which leads her to part 3 of her plan.
Right. And this is where the reviewer really started scratching their head about her character. She decides to frame Janie.
Frame Janie, the niece she supposedly cares about.
Exactly. She plants this valuable gold belt buckle, says it's been missing from the museum for weeks in Janie's wardrobe.
Columbo gets a warrant.
Finds the buckle, reads Janie her rights.
And Phyllis.
Faints again. You can almost set your watch by it.
So Janie's in a cell. Columbo visits her.
Yeah, brings her some stuff, including that belt buckle, and he just watches her.
And what does she do?
She uses the priceless antique belt buckle as an ashtray. Just casually grinds out a cigarette in it.
The Columbo moment.
Bingo. He sees that and knows instantly. She has absolutely no idea this thing is valuable or supposedly stolen or connected to anything. She's innocent.
So he goes back to Ruth, and he has the smoking gun, so to speak.
Literally, almost. He's listened to Edward's inventory tape, the one he was making the night he died.
And on the tape.
Edward clearly describes cataloging that exact belt buckle. Proves Ruth lied about it being missing for 2 weeks.
Game over.
Pretty much. Columbo tells her it's going to court, and all the family secrets are coming out.
And those secrets, they go back away, don't they? Columbo's been digging.
Oh, yeah. Especially around Phyllis and Ruth, and Janie's father, Peter Brandt, who died years ago.
The timeline around Janie's birth was suspicious.
Very. Born only 6 months after Phyllis married Peter Brandt, meaning Phyllis was 3 months pregnant at the wedding. A big scandal back then for a socialite.
And Peter Brandt's death.
Happened when Janie was 7. He was recovering from a heart attack, and Ruth was nursing him at the Lytton house.
And Columbo suggests.
He strongly implies Ruth might have somehow caused his fatal second heart attack, basically accuses her of killing him too. Which makes Janie furious, by the way. She defends Ruth.
Yeah, the reviewer had some theories about all this, didn't they? About Janie's real parentage.
Yeah, the episode leaves it ambiguous, which the reviewer kind of appreciated. One idea floated is that maybe Johnny isn't Phyllis's daughter at all. Maybe she's secretly Ruth's daughter with Peter Brandt.
And Phyllis raised her to avoid the scandal.
Could be. It might explain why Ruth seems to only really care about Janie.
But there was another theory, a darker one.
What if Janie isn't Ruth's daughter? And Ruth is just driven by this long-term revenge against the whole family. Maybe she killed Peter years ago, now she's killed Edward, and framing Janie is the ultimate way to hurt Phyllis.
That version makes the framing make more sense, maybe, if he actually hates Janie.
The reviewer thought so. It aligns better with her coldness, but it clashes with how the show tries to make her sympathetic and how Janie feels about her. It's that inconsistency again.
So, the ending.
Yeah.
Columbo interrupts dinner.
Yep. Tells them he's releasing Janie. The belt buckle proved her innocence to him.
And he tells Ruth he knows she lied about the buckle because of Edward's tape.
Right. And Ruth, she makes a choice. The reviewer saw it as her trying to protect Janie from having all this dirty laundry aired in court.
So she says she'll confess.
But only if Columbo takes back his accusation about Peter Brandt's death. Admits he lied about that.
Does he?
He does.
Yeah.
After a pause, he quietly retracts it.
Ruth turns herself in. With dignity, the reviewer noted.
Yeah, she leaves on her own terms, which was maybe a nice touch, but
The reviewer found the ending overall
flat. Yeah. Lacking that big gotcha moment Columbo is famous for. It just kind of peters out, was the phrase used.
Not the usual satisfying click.
No, and they wondered if maybe that whole redeeming Ruth saving Janie thing was a late addition, something tacked on during the rewrite process.
The rewrite. That's a key part of the source material, isn't it? This episode wasn't straightforward.
Not at all. This script, Old-Fashioned Murder, was a major rewrite by Peter S. Feibleman, who, remember, also played Schaefer.
He rewrote an original story by Peter S. Fisher, the Columbo legend.
Exactly. And Fisher used a pseudonym, Lawrence Vale, for his story credit, which the reviewer points out usually means the original writer was not happy with the final version.
So what was Fisher's original story like?
It was called In Deadly Hate, apparently a kind of Richard III story. Museum curator hires a PI to kill one nephew, then kills the PI and frames a second nephew.
Very different. No Ruth character.
No equivalent, no complicated family affection driving things. It had multiple cops investigating, an affair providing an alibi for one nephew. The reviewer really felt Fisher's version might have been stronger, more consistent, because the killer wasn't torn by these conflicting loyalties.
Interesting. Did the reviewer think the rewrite improved anything?
Well, they did think having a female killer, Joyce Van Patten, was a positive move, given there weren't that many in the classic run, so good idea, even if the script itself had issues.
And Falk's performance as Columbo here? How did that rate?
Not considered top-tier Columbo by the reviewer. They felt he sometimes veered into those exaggerated mannerisms, a bit like in Last Salute to the Commodore, which some fans didn't love.
A bit too much stick.
Maybe a little. And his interactions with Sergeant Miller were seen as kind of annoyingly cryptic. The final confrontation with Ruth, while Van Patten was good, didn't have the usual Columbo spark, according to the review. Should have been more gripping.
Okay, let's talk more about the characters based on that analysis. Ruth, Joyce Van Patten, praised, but also problematic.
Yeah, the reviewer acknowledges she's played as sympathetic, smart, dignified, doesn't underestimate Columbo. They even compared her to other complex killers like Beth Chadwick or Adrienne Carcini.
But the inconsistencies just kept coming up.
Right, that disconnect between the quiet, bookish woman and the ice-cold killer.
And the framing of Janie just makes no sense if we're supposed to believe she loves her.
Exactly. It forces you to wonder if maybe she hates Janie, which flips the whole dynamic the show seems to be aiming for. It's a fundamental writing flaw, in the reviewer's opinion.
And Phyllis. Celeste Holm, an Oscar winner. Got a rough ride in the review.
Oh, totally. Called the biggest casualty of the script. Reduced to these annoying fainting spells for supposed comedy. A waste of talent, they felt.
Said it made the audience seethe.
Yeah, strong words. A setback for women's lib, even. Ouch.
But they did admit her being annoying kind of helps Ruth.
Yeah, inadvertently makes Ruth seem more sympathetic just by comparison. Small comfort, maybe.
Oh, Jeannie Berlin.
She got better marks. Best of the rest support. Did well with the role, despite the traumatic discovery scene. The reviewer noted her real-life connection to Elaine May, who directed Falk, might explain the casting.
And the writer playing Schaefer, Peter S. Feibleman, his character's motivation was questioned.
Big time. Why would Schaefer go along with such a risky, frankly unbelievable plan from Ruth? Faking death, trusting her for a passport. It felt implausible, just a way to force the plot forward.
So summing up the writing critique, inconsistent Ruth, flat ending, questionable motivations.
That's the core of it. But again, not everything was bad. The location got praised.
The Doheny Mansion is the Lytton Museum. Yeah, you mentioned that. Dark, gothic.
Fit the mood perfectly. And the score, too. Dick de Benedictus's music, spooky, harpsichord-heavy, really enhanced that atmosphere.
And the family secrets angle was appreciated.
Yes. The ambiguity around Janie's parentage, Peter Brandt's death, the layers of deception. The reviewer liked that it wasn't all neatly tied up, left room for interpretation.
But the absolute best moment, the one scene that really popped,
had to be Daryl the stylist.
Right. Columbo getting info, Daryl's meltdown.
Columbo getting the haircut he can't pay for, the watch seller's face. It was just this burst of classic Columbo comedy and energy. The reviewer said it was basically the only genuinely funny part and really needed.
Yeah, I remember reading that. It does sound like a standout moment in an otherwise maybe lower key episode.
Which kind of sums up the overall feeling from the source. The premise itself, the museum setting, wasn't that exciting. And the episode, for the reviewer, just didn't generate much strong emotion. Their final verdict was kind of quietly bored.
Quietly bored. That's not what you want from Columbo.
Definitely not. They stressed it wasn't awful TV, just a disappointment compared to the show's usual high standard. Poorly plotted, a bit dull, forgettable, one of the lesser episodes of the classic run, in their view.
And it didn't live up to Falk's goal for that season, which was supposed to be fewer episodes but higher quality.
Seems like this one missed the mark on that front, according to this analysis.
Wow. Okay, so that's a really detailed breakdown, lots of criticism, but also those specific bright spots and that fascinating look at the script's history.
Exactly. It gives you way more context than just watching it cold. You see the plot mechanics, the character decisions, good and bad, the clues, and how that whole rewrite process might have impacted the final product.
And maybe understanding all those layers, the inconsistencies, the rewrites, the moments that land versus the ones that don't, changes how you look at TV shows, how stories get built. You start seeing the choices, you know.
Definitely makes you think more critically about what makes an episode work or why sometimes they just don't quite connect.
Which leaves us with a final thought to chew on. Thinking about everything the reviewer raised, especially Ruth's contradictory behavior towards Janie, that love versus framing puzzle, and the unresolved questions about Joni's parents or Peter Brandt's death. Does that lack of clear motivation, that ambiguity, maybe make the story more mysterious, more intriguing for you personally? Or does it ultimately just feel like flawed writing, like the reviewer suggested, making the whole thing less impactful, maybe even forgettable in the end?
Something to mull over.